Hey guys, it's Karamar review for Crawl. And what Crawl's essentially about is we center on this character, Haley. She is someone who is this world champion swimmer, and basically she lives in Florida. It is announced that they're going to have a Category 5 hurricane, and what she thinks is just going to be a normal hurricane that they're going through, it quickly becomes far more disastrous when these alligators start to implode underneath the water, and basically now Haley and her dad have to try to get away from them all and hopefully survive this storm, and that's really all there is to say. So Crawl overall, I'm going to be honest, I was not very excited for this film, very much at all going into it. Yes, it is a summer film. It's definitely one that you kind of expect to be released in the summer for sure. But to me, it just looked fairly generic. It looked very sort of just disposable and not something that I really was going to remember. However, it started to surprisingly get a lot of great reviews, even though critics for some reason didn't see it in advance and there wasn't really a lot of promotion for it. I really thought it was going to be one of those films that just turned out to be really bad because it wasn't getting much promotion, but then it started to get an outpour of great reviews, and I was really hoping it'd be something great, and I'm sorry to say, I still wasn't really the biggest fan of Crawl. This, to me, is just like The Shallows in 2016. Remember that film? Everyone was praising it. Everyone said, oh, it's one of the best films of the year. I thought it was just okay, and that's exactly how I feel about Crawl. That's exactly the same situation we find ourselves, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, that is one thing in this film that I will say I think is undeniably fantastic. The acting here is definitely really great. Similar to The Shallows, there's some really great performances, but especially from Kaya Scodelario, who I've always been a fan of. You know, I think she's always been a really great actress for sure, but this is probably her best performance yet. She's someone who really, this is her film. She really, Haley is someone who, you know, she is this swimmer, but she also is very determined to get out of this situation. She has to put her survival skills to use. She has to put her swimming to use, and I think overall, she just has some really great scenes here for sure. She definitely, you know, really carries this film on her shoulders, and I really did like what she was able to do here. I thought overall, she definitely gave a very strong performance. I think moving forward, I want to see her do some more challenging work. Let's stop casting her as just the love interest and things like that. I think this film shows she has a much bigger capability, and I definitely want to see her get more roles, because I thought she definitely did a very strong job here for sure. And same goes for Bary Pepper, who, I mean, he's always really great, but he definitely gives a very strong performance here for sure. Him and Scodelario have some very good chemistry. There's a lot going on with his character, and I think overall he definitely had some really great moments here, and I think overall the film does work very well off of their chemistry as actors. They're really the only big characters in the film. Like, the only other, like, actors, they're not in this film for very much. These two are really the only main characters here, and they do a really good job for sure. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, which I will say the directing here is not bad. Alexandre Aja's directing, he knows exactly what this movie is. It's just a fun summer blockbuster. He doesn't really try to make it anything more than that. It is a survival film, and I think overall he does a really good job with that. You know, there's definitely a palpable sense of tension. There's definitely a sense of, you know, there's definitely a sense of intensity throughout the entire film, and I think definitely that is very well presented here, and I think his directing style, it definitely is good. The film never takes itself too seriously. It definitely is a serious situation, but there are moments where it doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think he does do a good job with that overall. So the directing was definitely not the problem. It's really just the writing, and once again, similar to The Shallows, it's the same situation I have here. Look, I will say, this film is better than The Shallows overall, but it has almost the exact same problems in that I just simply did not care about these characters. Really, and I understand the movie is about the situation they're in. It's not really about the characters, but for me, if I really want to be invested in this, I need to care about the two characters, and I don't think the film did enough to really get us invested. And there's a point where it feels like they can cut a bit deeper into it. Without getting into it too much, Haley and her father, they have a very contentious relationship. There's a lot that these two have been through. There's a lot of sort of resentment she has towards her father. And they set that up quite well in the beginning, and I was really hoping that we get to see them confront this, but it really only happens in one scene, and after that point, it kind of just feels like everything's okay after that, and I just needed more. Again, I understand that you have this emerging threat of the alligators and things like that, but I just needed more from these two characters, and I don't think they did a very good job with that. I think they definitely could have given them a lot more to do, for sure. I will say, though, when the film is focusing on them trying to get out of the situation, there are moments where it can get very intense. There were moments where I was into it, especially because these alligators in general, they feel like animals. They aren't these overpowered, monsters. And that's something I did appreciate about this film. It feels very real. The situation these characters in, you know, if you are in Florida, I'm pretty sure there are situations like this that happen all of the time. I mean, I've heard stories where, alligators will just walk into people's houses and things like that. I mean, that stuff happens. Like, this is not anything that is, this is not anything that is that out of the ordinary. And I think the way they portray that is quite good. The alligators, they are one step ahead of them. But again, you get why the alligators are doing what they're doing, and they don't feel like I said, they don't feel like overpowered sort of creatures, and that's something I did appreciate in this film for sure. And there are situations where the film can get quite intense, and there definitely were moments where I was a bit into it. I just wasn't as invested as I wanted to be, solely because I just did not care that much about these characters, and I feel like the film didn't do that great of a job with that. Also, there is a point in this movie, it happens in the third act, where you think they're going to do something really bold, and they're going to do something really tragic, and I was ready for them to go there. I was ready for it. I wasn't getting emotional, but I was ready for them to make this decision. I was like, wow, if they actually make this decision, this film could actually get really good, and I want to see what they go through, and then they don't, and you can tell this was a decision that, at least to me, felt like they were going to make, but then they cheapened out on it, and it feels like after that, they didn't know what to do with this specific thing that they do afterwards, and that definitely bothered me. I felt like there was a potential to go a little bit darker than they did, and it just didn't really work. The jokes that they make, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I know a lot of people say the best thing about this film is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. I actually would have wanted to be a little bit more serious. It is definitely grounded in reality for sure, and there are moments where it is, you're white knuckle with tension, you're on the edge of your seat, you're really glued to the screen in that way, but I just need a little bit more there, and I don't think this film fully delivered on its concept. I just felt there was a little bit more they could have done. The cinematography, though, is great. I mean, that was a worry of mine going into this. I thought it was going to look really cheap, but for the most part, it looks really great. I mean, when we're just looking at, Florida and the way that the water is rising and things like that, there's all this flooding and things like that going on. It feels like they actually filmed this in Florida. Nothing about it feels Hollywoodized in that way, and that's something I think they did a really good job with for sure. And it's similar to Midsummer last week. I mean, I definitely don't want to move to Florida anytime soon because of the situation that they are under, and I think they do a good job with that here for sure. So yeah, that stuff I thought was definitely very well done. The alligators, like I said, they very much look real, and you forget that they're not real alligators. Like, that's how lifelike they really do look, and I think they do a good job with, capturing them for sure, and that is an improvement over the shallows. I didn't think the shark looked very good at all, but the alligators, they look very real, and they definitely do fit pretty organically into the environment of this movie, and I think that's something they conveyed well. The score, I definitely did enjoy, and the editing, that's my other problem with this film. I think it's way too short. There are definitely moments that they could have delved into a lot more. I think, again, if we were to dive more into the relation between Haley and her father, I think I would have just ultimately liked the film a lot more. And the way the movie ends also, this film has easily one of the most abrupt endings I've seen all year. I mean, I was shocked when it ended. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you do not expect it to end there. You think there's going to be, like, it fades out. You think there's going to be, like, another scene. But no, they just cut right to credits, and it just felt very weird overall. So, for the most part, while there definitely is stuff to like about Crawl, it just simply did not do it for me. Like I said, it just like The Shallows all over again. I know I keep comparing it to that, but this film is very similar in the sense where it's a survival thriller. A lot of people seem to be liking it, and I'm just not one of those people. I'm just kind of sitting here, not really. I mean, I understand why people really do like it, for sure. I think it definitely isn't as mediocre as the trailers made it out to be, but just overall, I really did not get all that much out of this movie, and it's mainly just because I did not really care about our main two characters. I needed a little bit more investment in them, and I don't think the film did enough to really get us in that situation. And like I said, I think the film could have really taken a risk to really push it even darker than it was. And trust me, there are some really gruesome moments in this movie, some that did have me audibly wincing, but I just think they need to go a little bit more. I need a little bit more than what they did, and I don't think they fully went there. So overall, I am going to give Crawl a C+. Like I said, there's a lot of people who are going to watch this movie and they're going to be fairly satisfied. This was just one of those cases where it just wasn't for me. I think after watching The Shallows and then this movie, I've come to the conclusion these kind of films are just not really for me. And I think after watching this, it is pretty obvious. But either way, guys, this is it for my review of Crawl. Let me know what you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video. And we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.